Would you keep investing your money for 18 months while your balance stayed deep in the red? Well, that's exactly what I did. And today, I'll be sharing my stocks and shares ISA portfolio that I've built up over the past 3.5 years. And I'll show you the exact funds that I own and my investment returns and losses from that portfolio during this period. As for the single most important lesson I learned when my portfolio was stuck in the red for 18 months, well, I'll share that near the end, so do stick around. Now, at the time of shooting this video, I have exclusively been using the Vanguard platform for investing. When I opened my account with them at the end of 2021, I think, they were very appealing due to their low fund charges and their wide array of available funds. However, at the start of this year, they introduced a monthly charge of £4 or £48 annually for balances under £32,000. For balances over £32,000, the charges are an annual 0.15% of your entire balance, which is capped at, I think, £375. And this is also in addition to the fund charges. So for those with smaller amounts to invest, well, this might represent a proportion of your investment that you might consider a bit too high, so it could be worth exploring other providers. At the time you watch this video, I would probably have or will be in the process of switching to Trading 212, who do not charge for investments that I have in my stocks and shares ISA. Now, note that while my funds are with Vanguard, you can likely find the funds that I will be talking about on other platforms, so the specific provider isn't the most critical detail here. However, do ensure that you check the fine prints of each provider for their charges. Now, my investment strategy has been a very simple one actually. It always starts with my why. What are my long-term goals for investing? This is actually very important as it determines my risk tolerance, which in turn plays a key role in determining the types of funds that I choose to invest in. Now, once I know my why, the how is all about consistency, because what you invest in is only half the story. How you invest is actually key. You see, you have to be consistent and stay the course, and I will be showing you the importance of this later on when discussing the results. Now, for me, I use a strategy called dollar cost averaging. Well, it's actually pound cost averaging for us here in the UK. Now, this meant I invested a set amount every month, regardless of what the market was doing. Some months, my money bought in when the prices were quite high. Other months, it bought in when the prices were low, getting me more for my money. What this did was it removed all the stress of trying to time the market. And here's what that consistency looked like in practice. In the first year, I invested £9,328, including a lump sum from my savings. In the second year, I added £5,100. And in the third year, I put in £8,161. This was helped by some of my side hustles. And in the last 7 months, I've added another £3,758. This consistent action is the engine of my portfolio, and I'm about to show you why it was so crucial. Now, I am currently invested in 3 different funds. Well, actually, it's more like 2.5. I know, it's a bit confusing, so let me explain. Now, the first fund I invested in was the VWRL. I chose this because it tracks the FTSE All-World Index, which covers global equities across developed and emerging markets. It is also invested across the world and across different sectors while having a relatively small charge and good historical average returns. Now, my risk tolerance when I purchased it was relatively high, hence investing in a 100% equities fund. Now, towards the end of last year, I decided to hold investments on behalf of my toddler to helpfully set her up for when she's an adult. For this, I settled on the Vanguard Life Strategy 100, which is all equities. I chose that one because I figured that, with the time horizon that my little one has before she becomes an adult, the risk on losing that money is very small. Now, one thing you should know about VWRL is that it is a distributing fund. These funds, also known as income funds, they pay out dividends directly to the investor rather than reinvesting it back into the fund. Now, this can be a bit of a faff, having to then reinvest those funds. So when Vanguard UK started to offer the accumulating version of this fund, which is the VWRP, that reinvests the dividends automatically, I immediately switched my monthly investment to the VWRP. Note that VWRL and VWRP are essentially the same fund if you ignore the method that they deal with dividend payouts. Hence the 2.5 fund comment that I made earlier. Now, what I'm about to show you is probably the single most important lesson from my entire journey this past 3.5 years. Now, I remember in the early days, the value of my investments actually fell below what I'd put in. Look at this. This chart shows my total profit or loss. Now, for the first 18 straight months, my portfolio was just stuck in the red. I couldn't seem to get a break. At its worst point in June 2022, I was at a cumulative loss of £650. At this point, I had invested thousands, roughly £10,000 of my own money, and my net result was negative. And this is what I refer to as the grind phase, and frankly, it's where most people tend to give up. But this is where my consistency mattered, because by continuing to invest every month, I was buying more and more units of my funds at these lower prices. And then in June 2023, the market turned and it's pretty much been smooth sailing since then. All those investments I made during this grind period, these were the fuel that supercharged the growth when the market actually recovered. Now, earlier on, I talked about being consistent, but talking about consistency is very easy. Sticking with it when your portfolio is dropping is the real challenge. Over this investing period, I saw months where my portfolio dipped deep into the red. Let me show you a real life example from just this year. In March, the market wiped nearly £1,000 from my portfolio in a single month. Seeing that bright red number is a really tough one, believe me. My gut was screaming, get out before it gets worse. But because I stuck to my consistent monthly investment plan, I was able to ride out these lows. And would you know it, just 2 months later, the market rewarded that patience with one of my best months ever, gaining most of it back. Guys, if I had panicked and sold at the bottom, I would have turned what was a temporary paper loss into a permanent real one, and I would have completely missed the recovery. But wait, some of the eagle-eyed amongst you might have noticed a massive dip in my balance that wasn't a market crash. This is because my portfolio journey actually includes one very important story. You see, in September 2024, I withdrew almost £12,000. Now, this wasn't due to me, panicking because of market conditions. I actually used that money for a real life goal. It was to help fund a house purchase. This is the entire point of investing, guys. Investing is a tool to help us build the life that we want. And so, after the grind and the roller coaster and a rather large withdrawal, let me share with you the results I've achieved so far. Over the last 43 months, my total net personal investments have added up to just around 14,262 by June 2025. But the most exciting part, guys, is my investments have actually grown in value to £18,078 by June 2025. Now that's an unrealized return of around £3,816 over that same period. This represents a total of about 26.8 return on total capital invested. However, this value is not very useful since it doesn't account for, investing my money at the different times that I did. Instead, using a money-weighted rate of return, which accounts for the timing of all my deposits and withdrawals, we can get an annualized return of 10.33%. What this means in simple terms is my entire journey is equivalent to having a savings account that paid me a fixed 10.33% every single year. And so, where do I go from here? Well, my strategy is still evolving. I since realized that the Life Strategy 100 fund that I opened for my little one has a significant overlap with my main VWRP fund. And so, to be more efficient, I'm moving towards a 3-fund ETF portfolio for better diversification. And if you're wondering how to avoid overlap and to make your portfolio a lot more efficient, well, trust me, I've got you covered. You can check out the link in the description box where I break down exactly how to fix it step by step. Now, using the 10.33 figure that I calculated earlier, my portfolio is currently generating the equivalent of £155 a month, all of which is being reinvested. Guys, it's really exciting to imagine that if I keep investing and I grow my fund to say £360,000, for example, it could generate me about £3,000 in total passive income. Now, of course, investing is never this smooth, and in reality, the returns will be higher in some months and they'll be lower or negative in others. And remember, these investments sit within an ISA, so for me, they're in a tax-free wrapper. Any gains I make will stay completely mine. There are no taxes to pay on the income, or when I decide to withdraw any amount. Now, ultimately, this journey has shown me that being consistent is everything when it comes to investing. By focusing on regular contributions, especially during the tough times, this is what was able to turn those early setbacks into the results that I have today. Now, I hope this video has been helpful, and as always, thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions or if there's any other investing topic that you'd like me to cover, please drop a comment in the box below. And if you found this video useful, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.